Hi there, this is Dara here from Nurture, and in this subject specific tutorial, I'm going to cover how you can check for understanding within subjects in the PE, Health and Digital Technologies subject departments. Okay, now I'm going to cover two examples here, but all of the principles I'm sharing here will work across any of the subjects in these tutorials, and I'm just covering how you can set up these sessions before you run them in class. Okay. So just a reminder before I start as well, I am doing check for understanding sessions and I'm hoping to run them live in class. So what that means is I'm just hoping to check at a couple of points throughout my classes how my students are doing in terms of, are they taking on board the content that I'm teaching them? So with that, I'm only going to, you would only do a handful of checks throughout a class. If you want to do something a bit more comprehensive and outside of class, then you would just change the session type here to an assessment type, and you could add a lot more questions than what I'm about to show you of a lot more different types, and students can complete it outside of class. Okay, so the first example I'm going to show is the health example. So in this case, I have an upcoming class on the body and physical activity that I'm hoping to teach. So how I set this up is just like I have in some of my previous subject specific tutorials. Is in this box I put in an overview of my lesson plan. Okay, now this one is very, very basic, but the more detail you can add in here, the more specific feedback, more specific check for understanding questions we can generate. So here I'm just making sure that it is year 7 HPE that I'm teaching. This is the overall topic I'm teaching. I'm hoping maybe there's 26 students of mixed ability. Now, you can change this if you like. You don't even necessarily need to include it. I would say more if you have specific students that are of a certain ability, maybe you might call that out here, but it's just something you can add in. I've got an overall learning intention for the whole lesson, and then I've got the subtopics that I'm hoping to cover in this lesson. So in this case, I've got why the body responds at all, the heart and lungs during exercise, and recovery after exercise. Now I'm going to put this prompt into the description as well alongside the tutorial so you can have a play around with it. But the main thing I'm trying to get across here is that you must just put in an overview of the lesson you're hoping to teach in this class, and then we will generate the effective hinge questions to be able to check for understanding throughout. Okay, so for this lesson I'm going to generate 3 questions. And I'm just going to click next. I'm not going to change any of the other additional settings. I've covered them in other tutorials, so go back and look at those whenever you want. And after a few seconds, it's going to generate 3 effective hinge questions for me. Okay, so what is a hinge question? So a hinge question is a multiple choice question that has one correct answer or more than one correct answer. But what makes it effective is that the incorrect answers surface a specific misconception that students might have. And it's not that they're trying to catch students out, but it's that if a student selects a wrong answer, it kind of gives you an insight into their thinking. Okay, so going back to what Professor Dylan William has taught us in course 3 of Nurture Learn, what makes an effective hinge question? It's that the wrong answers are a diagnostic. Okay, and I'd highly recommend that you go to course 3 in Nurture Learn to learn all about effective checking for understanding and effective hinge questions as well. Okay, so when we actually generate the initial session, it will always generate you hinge questions in the format of multiple choice, and typically they might only be single answer, but we can edit them around a little bit if we want to. So if we look at these questions here, so the first one, during physical activity, why does the body need to increase both heart rate and breathing rate? We can see we've got 1 correct answer and 3 incorrect answers, but crucially we have this explanation as to why the correct answer is correct, but also why the incorrect answer is maybe misconceived. Okay, so this explanation is not going to be revealed to the students unless you choose to reveal it when you go to reveal the answer. But again, just thinking what we're trying to do here, we're just running this in class as a quick check for understanding. It's not like we're assessing the student or anything. We just want to make sure that we know whether we need to move on, recap, or reteach this specific subtopic. Okay, now let's say if I thought a question was a little bit too difficult, I'll just click on edit and I would just say this
question is too difficult for this group. And I would just click rewrite, and it will rewrite the question in a more straightforward manner for them. Similarly enough, if I feel the question is too easy, I would get it to increase the difficulty, and you could just click on this quick option here. We also have other quick options here, like if you want to simplify the wording or shorten it or improve the choices, they're all here. There's also a few more behind these three dots here. If I want there to be more than one correct answer, I can just toggle this to multiple, and I would just say give more than one correct answer. Click rewrite, and with that it'll rewrite the question so that there are more than one right answers. Okay, and going back to what we learned in course 3 as well, this is really effective to be able to distinguish the higher achievers in the class, because most students might get the obvious answer but they may not identify the other one as well as part. So that is how you can edit around the multiple choice questions. The last thing I'm going to cover before I move on to the next example is a little bit on open answers. Okay, so we do give you the ability to create questions that are open answers, so they're not multiple choice. However, the one thing I'll caveat is they don't really lend themselves to checking for understanding, because they're not as they're not as straightforward as to whether the answer is correct or not. Now, I'm going to cover this in a separate video on how you can create open answer questions, because with these we also require a couple of other things as well, like they need to have success criteria, they may have model answers as well, and the more things you add, the more effective we can be in terms of delivering in the moment feedback for students. I'm going to cover that in a separate video, but the point I'm trying to make here is that these multiple choice questions are the effective hinge questions you should be running in a live class environment, because again, like I said, we're just trying to check for understanding. Very quick. Each time I release a question, I would hope that we can move on past it in a minute or less. We're not doing a full assessment of students here. Okay, so that is one example in the health and physical education space. The next example then is just going to be in digital technologies. So same principles all apply here in terms of how I'm generating these questions. So for this, I have this is going to be for year 7. This is the subject. This is the overall topic I'm hoping to teach. I'm expecting maybe 26 students with mixed ability here. But my overall learning intention for the lesson is this, and these are the 3 subtopics that I'm hoping to include or teach throughout the lesson. I'm going to ask it to generate 3 questions, and I'm just going to prepare this for later. I'll just click next. And once again, it's going to generate 3 effective hinge questions for me, probably with single answers in them, and that's absolutely fine. And we can see here our 3 questions have been generated, and because this is digital technologies and it uses some actual numbers, it's applied specific number formatting here in some places. But each of these questions, like I said, will surface the right answer, and it'll also surface the misconceptions around the wrong answer. Okay. Now, all the same principles apply that I've shown you in the HPE example. If you want more than one answer, you can go in and edit the question and change this to multiple and request it to change this. If you want to increase the difficulty of a question, you can just click this and it will make it an even more difficult one to work with. And that is basically it. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. If you have any examples of effective lesson plans you've uploaded or prompts you've used to generate really good sessions, or if you have run really effective check for understanding session in your class, let us know. We're more than happy to feature them. And yeah, please feel free to reach out, and I will see you in the next video.